welcome back for episode number 143 of the weekly playback. So I know I said last week was going to be a shorter episode, or did I say that? I can't remember. But this week is actually going to be a shorter episode, and hopefully not 2 hours long like last week's episode, because I only actually really have one game to talk about and then maybe mention another 2 games briefly. And yes, I got a haircut because, not that anyone cares, but I was just really bored with my hair and I just needed to do something different with it. And the last time I had a fringe, which is what they call it in Europe, in America they just call them bangs, but the last time I had one I think was in 2021. And I know eventually I'll get really irritated by them because they grow quickly and then you have to get them trimmed, and then eventually when you do try to grow them out, then it seems like they don't grow quick enough, and then you're like in this weird awkward stage when you're trying to grow them out. So yeah, but for now I'm happy with them, so let's see how long that lasts. So anyway, so let's just get into the one major game I played and then all the other stuff. So let's talk about Pergola. Pergola is a 2025 game for 1 to 4 players, designed by Michal Golubiowski and Zemek Wojtkowiak, and the art is done by Carolina Kijak, and it's published by Rebel Studio. And this is a review copy which I received from Asmodee USA. So thank you to Asmodee for the review copy. So I played a 4-player game of this and I really enjoyed it. So in this game, you're basically just doing different actions, and you're basically going to be getting all your points at the end of the game. So you're not really keeping track of points as you're playing. There might be like some different strategies you want to try out in order to try to get a certain number of points, but all your points you're going to be adding at the end of the game, and you'll be kind of keeping track of what you're doing and your strategy with one of these boards, which each player will have, to kind of help them to keep track of like what the scoring will be at the end of the game. So that might like kind of help you throughout the game in deciding what you want to do and which actions you want to take. So I know when I did my unboxing last week, I was like, oh wow, this insert is amazing because nothing falls out, even though there's no lid for this, but that's not true. Things totally did fall out of this. So yeah, but you're actually going to be using this during the game. So underneath there are some components which you're then going to add on top of this board. So you're going to have dragonflies rather, on some of these lily pads here. And then you're going to have your frogs come onto this board, and when you do a frog action, you can get a ladybug, a butterfly, or a bumblebee, or if you've met the requirements for a dragonfly, you can get the dragonfly, but we'll get into all of that in a minute. So you're actually going to be using this token holder throughout the game, and it's just going to sit like that. But it is nice and convenient to have all your little bits and bobs that you're going to be using throughout the game. So each player is going to have a garden board, and that garden board is comprised of 3 different boards. So you're going to have your like beehive, and I really like how continuous it is here. So they've made it so that each board connects with it, and it looks like the artwork just continues along, which is really nice. So you can see that over here. So this is going to be on the left side of your board, and then on the right side of the board, you're going to have a little stream, which is really nice. And again, it just connects really nicely. And each person's garden looks a little bit different, so I'll just show you the 4 different gardens. So I took this one because it had purple on it. Then there's this one, which is really pretty and autumny looking. Then there's this one. This is kind of boring looking. And this one's a little bit boring looking too. Okay, so yeah, so those are the 4 different ones. So then you're going to have this holder, which you're going to be separating all the different tools by color, and you'll just be using this to hold all the different tools that you'll need throughout the game. And you're going to try to have them placed so that they're like this, so you can't see what actions are on the tools. So let me just try to do this so you can kind of get an idea of what it'll be like. So I mean, right now all the tools are in the bottom, but you're going to put it like this and maybe have it facing away from you or something, so that way when you grab a tool, you can't really see what's on the tool when you're putting them in the drafting area. But there are 4 different types of tools. So you've got yellow ones, purple ones, gray ones, and teal colored tools. And they all have different kinds of actions and stuff on them. And then finally you have this leaf board, and there's going to be 3 different stacks of leaves on this board. And then what else? I think that's it. Oh yeah, and this is like where you're going to be taking your tool from when it's your turn. So there's always going to be a tool above or below each action. So on your turn, you're going to take a tool, and after you've taken a tool, you will be performing all the actions on the tool, and then whichever action you took, and then sliding them down after that. So yeah, and they slide down in this direction, as you can see from the arrows. And then each person has their own little tool holder, which will also help you keep track of how many turns you've taken and how many you have left. Because every time you take a tool, you're going to stick it into your little tool holder, and then you'll be able to count how many turns you have left, which is very helpful. And then each person, their little tool holder comes with their own components. So each person has 2 water droplets, which you'll be able to do stream actions with. Each person has 4 different honey jars, and I'll talk about what the honey jars do. A birdhouse on which you'll be storing your leaves. Honestly, I don't think that this was really necessary, but it helps you to remember what your player color is. So for the frog, so I think that's like really the only reason they have a birdhouse, because otherwise you might not remember what your player color is, because again, really not necessary. So yeah, so each person will have a little tool holder, and that comes with all of your player components. So now let's get into how this game plays. So on your turn, as I mentioned, again, you're going to take a tool, and then you're going to perform the actions on the tool. Now this game, the main meat and potatoes of this game is all the actions you're going to do, which then will score you points at the end of the game. So you're basically going to end up creating a really beautiful gardenscape on your garden board. So the different actions you can do are, so let's just go over some of them. So if you see like a symbol like this, so that is a magnolia. So that means you will get to take one of the larger magnolias and add it to your player board. If you see a symbol that has only 1 magnolia leaf, then you'll take the 1 magnolia leaf and add it to your player board. Now, how you add it is the important part, because that's what determines scoring at the end. So you're going to basically have 1 big magnolia bush, and your magnolias are going to start coming off of other magnolias in your magnolia bush. So I'll post a picture of my board, because I went heavily on the magnolias. Like, you know, I was the one who had the largest magnolia bush in our game. So you're going to basically be creating magnolia bushes and sprouting a new leaf from an existing one. And then, so this kind of shows you how that works. So depending on whether you picked up a 1 or a 2, what your action allowed you to do, you might be able to expand even farther along horizontally. But if you, for example, like if I had this and then I had another 2, 1 over here. So now that's the farthest, because each person is going to start with a 2. So now this is, well, not necessarily, I guess, but this is the farthest that I'm going to be able to go if I start like this. But then if I put a 2 on this one, a 2, a Y magnolia on this one, and then 1 on this one, then 1 on this one, then horizontally it's going to be much bigger. And that's going to be really beneficial for scoring when you score ladybugs. So magnolias, in terms of how they score, they're going to score based on your level and the level that each magnolia is on, which you'll see over here on your scoring board. So you'll see level 1 magnolias will score just 1 point, and level 2 will score just 1, level 3 will score just 1, and then level 4 magnolias will score 2 points, and then 5 and above will all score 3 points. So the magnolias in themselves will score points, but then ladybugs will also score points. And the way that ladybugs score is that they go on the different magnolia leaves, as you can see. So you'll see that each magnolia has a spot for a ladybug over here. And ladybugs score higher, more points, if you have more of them in a row. So for example, since you only have 1 ladybug in this row, that ladybug is going to score only 1 point. But since you have 2 ladybugs in this row, each ladybug is going to score 2 points. And since you have 3 ladybugs in this row, each ladybug is going to score 3 points. So the more ladybugs you can get in a row in your magnolia bush, the more points you will score. So that is how the magnolia action works. So if you get a tool and it happens to have a magnolia on it, you're going to add it to your board and then hopefully create this magnificent magnolia bush, which will score you lots of points. So, okay, so I guess maybe I'll just go through here and then show you what the different actions are. So here we have, I believe these were called hollyhocks. I really don't remember the name of each individual plant, but let's see, I think that's what, yeah, hollyhock flowers. So hollyhocks, you want to get different colors because each set of different colors is going to score you more points. So as you will see here, if you have one of each color, that one set is going to score you 6 points. If you then have 2 different colors, that will be 3 points, and then one by itself would be 1 point. So the more different sets you can get of your hollyhock flowers, the more points you will score. And then on top of the hollyhocks, so you're going to stack like colors on top of each other. And again, you'll keep them kind of next to each other so that you can see how many sets you're accumulating for the end of the game. But on top of your hollyhocks is where butterflies go. So the higher up the butterfly, the more butter points you will score. So butterflies on the lowest level will score only 1 point, on the second level 2 points, on the third level 2 points, on the fourth level 3 points, and every level above 4 will score 3 points per butterfly. So you definitely want to try to get your butterflies on higher levels. And we'll talk about how you get bugs and all of that on your different plants and how you can move them around in a little bit. So that is hollyhocks. Now let's move to honeysuckles. I believe they're called honeysuckles. Ladybug, buttercups. No, they're called buttercups. I don't know why I call them honeysuckles. So you have different kinds of buttercups. So you have little pink ones, and then you have blue ones. So these, you have 2 different types of buttercups, and they're going to be placed on the pergola above the beehive. So that one part of your board, they're going to go over here. And these can have bumblebees on them. So the blue ones can hold 2, and the pink one can hold 1 bumblebee. So if you acquire a buttercup and a bumblebee at the same time, you can immediately place a bumblebee onto it. Now, why you want bumblebees on your buttercups is so that you can unlock your honey jars. So again, I mentioned at the beginning when we were going over player components that each person will have 4 honey jars. They're going to start this side up. And in order to unlock your first one, you need to have 4 bumblebees in your area of this board on buttercups. So you have to have your bumblebees on buttercups in that part of the board. So in order to unlock your first honey jar, you need 4 bumblebees. Then in order to unlock your second honey jar, you need, I believe it's 7 bumblebees. And then in order to unlock your third one, it's 9 bumblebees. And you can only unlock a maximum of 3 honey jars. These will give you extra points at the end of the game. So for example, I unlocked my ladybug one, so I turned it face up so it was colored, and then at the end of the game, I scored an additional point per ladybug that I had. So that's one of them. Another one will score you 1 point for your leaves. Another one will score you an additional point per butterfly that you have. And the last one will score you 1 point per lantern that you have. And I'll get into lanterns and all of that in a minute. So those are your buttercups. Now, again, we'll get to the action that allows you to move bumblebees from one location to another and so on. So that is buttercups. There is, let's just move along this list. There is a lavender, which kind of looks like a buttercup, but it's not a buttercup, but it also holds bumblebees. So in order to grow a lavender, you need 2 leaves. So if you manage to collect 2 of these leaves from actions that allow you to collect these and you place them like this, then you can either put this here or you can place a mini dragonfly there. So there's mini dragonflies. And you can just take one and put that there. So at the end of the game, a mini dragonfly would be worth a point. However, if you placed a lavender there, then if you manage to fill it up with bumblebees, that's going to be worth more points at the end of the game. So that's what these are for. You get to take one if you manage to have 2 leaves like that on your board. So that's lavender. And you'll see here that you'll score 8 points if you have a lavender with 3 bumblebees on it. And at the end of the game, you'll score 2 points for each buttercup that has pink one that has a bumblebee on it, and you'll score 4 points for each blue buttercup that has 2 bumblebees on it. And then each set of your buttercups will also just score points without bumblebees on them. So that is how those score. And we just talked about the lavender, but by themselves, these will score 2 points. So you're also just going to get points for those, which is really nice. So dragonflies. So there's going to be dragonflies on the lily pads here. And if you've met the requirement for a dragonfly, then you can pick up the dragonfly. So there's going to be a stack of dragonflies, and on each stack is going to be the largest one. So there's 1 pink one of each kind. And then there's going to be 3 green ones, or 2 maybe. I think it's 2 green ones, I believe, underneath each pink one. So not each player will have the opportunity of getting one. But for example, this one says that you need to have 4 leaves. If you have 4 leaves and your frog manages to land here, then you can take this dragonfly. And the big ones are worth 5 points at the end of the game. So you'll just put this somewhere in your garden. This one says you have to have 4 buttercups. So they require you to have 4 of something. This one requires you to have 4 magnolias, and then the last one requires you to have 4 hollyhocks, I believe, or is it leaves? One or the other. I think it's hollyhocks. Yeah, so that's what that one is. So in order to get the dragonflies, you need to have 4 of something. And if you manage to get a green one, you still need to have 4 of something, but it's going to be worth fewer points. So the green ones are worth 3 points. And then again, if you manage to get any of these tiny ones to put between leaves, those are worth 1 point each. And then at the end of the game, you're also going to score based for any honey jars you flipped over, your water droplet, and different colored leaves. So the leaves that you're collecting from the leaf action, which I'll get to in a little minute, the more different colored leaves you have, the more points you will get. And I believe there's a total of 5 different colored leaves. So if you have all 5 different colored leaves, then you can earn a total of 5 points. So let's just go over the actions a little bit. So again, there's this action board, and underneath it is going to be a tool, and you're going to take a tool of your choosing. There's no cost associated with them. So you can pick any tool, and then you'll get the action that is above the tool you just took, plus the actions on the tool itself. So you'll see all the different kinds of actions on the tools here. So for example, this one would let you take a lantern and a blue buttercup. So the lanterns are these special one-time use things that you can use throughout the game, and there's only 4 of each type, and you can get more than 1 of a color if you want. So you can potentially screw another player out of getting a lantern. So let me just show you the different lanterns and what they do. So this one, and you can only use this one if you are already doing that particular action. So for example, if I'm already doing get a ladybug action, then I can get an additional ladybug. Or if I'm already doing get a butterfly, then I can do an additional butterfly. So you have to actually be doing the action to then activate your lantern. Similarly, this one, if I'm already doing a frog action where I'm moving my frog from one lily pad to an adjacent lily pad, then I can hop it in extra space. But you have to already be doing the frog action in order to use this lantern. Similarly, this one, if I'm already doing a water drop action, then I can do an extra water drop movement by using this lantern. So you would just flip it over if you've used it. This is the only one that's a little bit different. So this one, when I'm collecting a tool, this allows me to do an action that's different than the one that's directly above my tool. So this just lets you basically choose the action of your choice instead of being stuck with the one that's above your tool. So let's just go over the actions here. So this one is a frog action. So you're going to be able to hop from one adjacent lily pad to another. So you'll see that the big ones are connected to each 2 other ones. So a ladybug, this one is connected to the bumblebee and to the butterfly. The butterfly is connected to the ladybug and the bumblebee, and so on. The ones that have dragonflies on them, it's not possible for you to, in just one frog action, go from one dragonfly lily pad to another dragonfly lily pad, as you can see. So you're going to need multiple frog actions in order to do that. So the dragonflies, which will score you points at the end of the game, will be a little bit more difficult to get, because when you get a frog action, you can only jump from one adjacent lily pad to another. And then so you'll just collect the thing, and you can only go get the dragonflies if you've met the requirements by getting 4 of whatever is required on that dragonfly. The water droplet action allows you to move your water droplet down a stream. And that allows you to collect whatever is adjacent to wherever your water droplet lands on a water droplet space. So this is a good way for you to get bumblebees and butterflies and ladybugs. And then if you manage to make a water droplet reach the end, you can then select where you want it to go, and you'll get an additional scoring at the end of the game. Which is nice. So you can see the different types of scoring that you can get at the end of the game if you got your water droplets down there. And again, each person has 2 water droplets. You can never have 2 water droplets on the same space. So if you want to go down the same path again, you have to make sure that you move one before you can move the other, since they can't occupy the same water droplet space. This one allows you to pick up a leaf. So again, we talked about how there's a leaf board and there's 3 different stacks of leaves on here, and you will get to take the top leaf from one of those stacks. So these are just going to be shuffled at the beginning of the game, and then you'll just pick up whichever one you want. So again, there's 5 different colors. So this one, for example, if you pick this up, you would be able to collect a butterfly and do a flutter action. And then you're just going to add it to your birdhouse. Or around your birdhouse. This one would allow you to collect a ladybug. So again, if you have all 5 different colors at the end of the game, that will be worth 1 point each. So that is the leaf action. And then finally, if you took a tool that was underneath this spot, you would get 2 flutter actions. So now let's talk about bugs. So if you collected a bug and you had somewhere where that bug could immediately go, when you collected a bug, then you could immediately place it somewhere. So for example, if I collected a ladybug and I already had an available spot on a magnolia, then I could place it there. Now it has to stay there unless I do a flutter action to move it from there to another magnolia if I want to move it. But if I collected a bug and it had nowhere to go, then it would just kind of stay somewhere in my garden at the top of my garden board, like over here. It would not go onto a plant because it doesn't have a space to go on, or into a buttercup. So now if I have a flutter action, now I can move the bugs that are just kind of hanging out here to different plants and stuff if I want to. And you can move them from plant to plant. So for example, if I had buttercups that had bumblebees on them, but now I have a lavender plant and I want to put 3 bumblebees on my lavender, now I can do flutter actions in order to move a bumblebee from here to over here if I want to. So that's what the flutter action is. So if you collected a tool from here, then you would get 2 flutter actions, and that's how you move bugs around. And you're definitely going to want to move bugs around as the game progresses, because as we discussed, bugs that are higher up on your hollyhocks will score more points. So if you've got a really tall hollyhock stalk, I guess that's called a stalk, I really don't know, then you're going to want to move your butterflies from the lower positions to the higher up positions so that they will be worth more points. Similarly, if you have a really big magnolia bush and you have like one part of your magnolia bush that has a huge horizontal section, then you're going to want to move your ladybugs to that section so that they score more points. So you're definitely going to want to move your bugs around, and the flutter action is what you can allows you to do that. So those are basically all the actions. So you're basically just taking a tool, doing the actions on the tool, and then doing the action on the board from which you took the tool, and then it's the next player's turn. And you're just going around and around until everyone has filled their little tool holder with 15 different tools. So each person in this game has 15 actions. And again, it's really nice to just be able to keep track of that with this little tool holder. And it just really adds to the aesthetic of the game. So it's just a really beautiful game. And I like how it's almost like you're an artist creating your own little garden and deciding where things should go and position them the way you want to. It's just a really pretty game. It's just really, really beautiful and pleasant in that way. Just very aesthetically pleasing. But yeah, all the scoring just happens at the end of the game. There's a little bit of player interaction, and that players might take something that you want, because again, you can take more than one color of these lanterns. So, players might screw you over that way. Players might take a dragonfly before you had the chance to get it. Players might take a tool that you wanted, that you had your eyes on. So, that's really where all the player interaction comes in. Otherwise, there really is no player interaction. So the only player interaction is when someone just takes something that you want. But otherwise, there's like no blocking or anything anything like that going on in this game. So yeah, it all just comes down to scoring at the end, and you know, just maybe changing your strategy as you go along, like you know, so yeah, so just deciding what the best way to score points is. So in our 4-player game, the scores were very close and we all kind of did different things. So me, I went heavy on the Magnolias and I scored 92 points. Then another player had 93 points, and then another player had 94 points, and the winner had 95 points. So we were all just 1 point away from each other, which I thought is I think is the closest game I've ever played of any game ever. So that was just really funny. The way that worked out. But yeah, just a really beautiful, pleasant game, and if that sounds like something you're interested in, then you should definitely check it out. I think I've gone over everything, and there is a special order in which the tools come out, so you do all the tools of one color before you start placing tools of another color underneath this. So the tools are going to change up a little bit as well, and I just want to show you some more tools just so you can kind of get an idea of the different actions that you'll see on them. So for example, this one allows you to collect a blue lantern and one leaf magnolia. This one allows you to collect a butterfly and a leaf for your lavenders or dragonflies that you can put in. So you'll see that the tools have different things on them as well. I don't believe you'll see like a flutter action on the tools. I don't recall seeing that on the tools. Yeah, so you can see the picture and what my garden looked like at the end. So again, one side is just going to have your buttercups and your honey jars that you might have managed to flip over. And then the other side is going to have your stream with your water droplets if you get a water droplet action in order to collect things and maybe get some scoring at the end of the game. And then you have your main garden board, which is where you're going to be putting all your flowers. And again, you'll have this right on top of your garden or below your garden to help you keep in mind how things score. So that will just, you know, kind of help you decide which actions you want to take or which tools you want to take. So yeah, just a really nice, pleasant game. I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much to Asmodee USA for sending me this review copy. So yeah, so if that sounds like something you're interested in, then you should definitely check it out. So another game I played recently, which I do not own, is Panda Royale, which is a 2024 game for 2 to 10 players, designed by Nathan Jen and Jake Jen, and the art is done by Nathan Jen and is published by Last Night Games. Now this is just a dice drafting, dice rolling game with really pretty colorful dice in it. So I'm not going to talk too much about it, but basically each person starts with, I believe, 1 yellow die, and you're like rolling a die, and then that kind of determines who gets the panda that round. And then you're basically just trying to draft different colored dice, which will allow you to get higher and higher points based on how the dice work. So different colored dice work in different ways. So for example, if you have blue dice, you're going to sum the total of all your blue dice for a certain round. However, if you have a blue glitter dice, then not only do you sum the total of the blue dice, then you multiply that by 2. So yeah, and there's different types of blue dice. Like some of them have like go up to a value of 12. Some of them are just regular D6 dice and so on. There's like purple dice that have like higher numbers on them. There's translucent dice, and if you have one of those, then at the end of the round, before you start drafting new dice for the next round, you can steal a die from someone and give them the translucent die instead. There's red dice, which could cause you to have negative points if you roll some like negative pips, negative multipliers on those dice, but otherwise they can also help you to get a lot of points as well. So just all different kinds of dice that work in different ways. So you're just rolling your dice, adding up your points, seeing who the panda like lead is, and then yeah, then you take turns drafting dice. So the way that the dice are drafted, I think you have to go in a certain order, but we played an 8-player game of this, and with 8 players, it was just easier to then just go clockwise from whoever had the panda that round, rather than go by actual number, which is what I think you were supposed to do. So yeah, it's just a dice rolling game with take that in it. So yeah, I actually ended up winning. I had 500 some points. Let me see if I can see my score. So yeah, my strategy ended up being just collecting as many blue dice as I could, because I had one of the multiplier, the glitter blue dice as well. So that allowed me to just kind of double my blue score anytime I for each round. And there's like I think 12 rounds or something in total. So it's a bit of a longer filler game. So yeah, so I had 557 points, which I guess is a good score. And then the next person was with 499, and then there was a couple 400 scores, and the lowest score was 388. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what the scores will be in this game. So yeah, so that was another game I played, and then I played another game of Far Away, which I've talked about a number of times on this channel, which I absolutely love. And this time I was able to play with the expansion, and I won yet again. So I feel like I've really figured out the strategy for this game. So I feel like I'm pretty good at winning at this game now. Like just looking at my history of the plays that I have of this, I've won a number of times from my most recent plays. So yeah, and was that my highest score? I don't know if that was my highest score because I've actually played this game a number of times on Board Game Arena as well, but I don't count those in my BG Stats app, so I'm not sure. I would have to go check BG Stats and see what my highest score was there. So those are the only games I played in the last week, so let's move on. So the next section is games that I'm backing and games that I've received, and that's super easy because I have nothing to talk about this week. So I'm not backing anything right now, and I haven't received anything. So yeah, so now we can just move on. So thank you to those who showed concern for what happened at the colony. Luckily, I've had no other negative experiences since then. Like I mentioned, I go every day now with my pepper spray and my personal alarm. But thank you to those who showed concern, so I really appreciate that. Cats are doing fine. It's just been very, very rainy. It's just really gross. But luckily, you know, the food is covered, so their food is fine. I just want to talk about how right after I released my video on Monday, shortly thereafter, Eric Lang made a post on Blue Sky saying how calling the police is an act of violence. Now, is this just a coincidence? I don't know. Like, I mean, it seems like a weird thing to say with no other context for him to say. And it happened to be just shortly after I released my video on Monday talking about my experience and talking about how I called the police. And before that, on Blue Sky, I had also mentioned when it actually happened, the day that it happened, I talked about my experience and how I called the police. And I was asking on Blue Sky, like, you know, for people who believe that all cops are bad, like, what are you supposed to do in a situation then where you need someone, you need some assistance, or you want someone to come and arrest the perpetrator and hope that they don't do that kind of thing again. Like I've talked about on my channel before about how years ago I applied for an attorney position with the Police Accountability Board in Rochester. And I talked about how I was glad I didn't take that position in the end because it was a complete shit show. Like there's been articles written about what a disaster the Police Accountability Board in Rochester, New York turned out to be. The reason I didn't want to take a job with them after interviewing with them, and if I remember correctly, I think I interviewed for 2 different positions with them back then. But the reason I didn't take a job with them in the end was because they were demanding way too much of the attorneys they wanted to hire. Like it was clear that they just did not care about work-life balance at all. Like it was just insane the amount of hours and work that they were requiring of attorneys that they wanted to hire. So I was like, hell no. Like I believed in the mission. I believed in the mission of holding police accountable when they abuse their authority, their power. So I am someone who recognizes that police abuse their power in America. Like that much has been clear for a very long time. Like we see, you know, people being killed when they should not be killed. We see all kinds of horrible things that the police are doing in America. So what are you supposed to do if something happens and you want to make sure that that perpetrator gets caught and is held accountable and doesn't do that again? I mean, you know, it really bothers me that someone can make a status like, oh, calling the police is a violent act without any other, like, you know, alternatives or suggestions. Like, okay, calling the police is a violent act. So then what would you have someone do when they've been, so, you know, sexually harassed or sexually assaulted? Like if a woman is raped, should she just let the raper go, the rapist go? Because like, oh, it's a violent act to call the police and the police might abuse their power. So we should just let the rapist go and hope and pray he doesn't do something to someone else. Like there right now is no other alternative. So I'm just like, seriously, honestly, like, it just seems like such a troll post from Eric Lang to make on the same day that my video was released, in which I talked about how I called the police after being sexually harassed in a public space. Like, what else could I do? So if anyone is watching this, like, I do believe that, yes, police do abuse their power, and that's a huge issue in America that needs to be addressed. But like, what can you do? Like, if you are in danger and you don't have the means to help yourself, what are you going to do? And even if you do have the means to help yourself, you can't take the law into your own hands. That's how you end up with a lawless, society where people just do whatever the hell they want. Like, is that the kind of society you want to live in? So you have to go through the proper routes in trying to address this issue, which, you need to try to get to the root of the issue. And the root of the issue is like the legal system. So, for people who really care, like, go become a lawyer, go work in legislation, like, do things that can actually make a difference then, and try to get it at the root of the problem. Because just calling the police as a violent act and trying to make someone feel shitty about the fact that they called the police on someone when they were sexually harassed, like, what a shitty thing to do. Like, if someone else called the police on someone if they were sexually harassed, like, I wouldn't say to them, oh, you just committed a violent act when they've been sexually harassed. Like, what the hell? Like, so yeah, so I think it was a really shitty thing of Eric Lang to post. And if it was directed at me, like, hello, give some suggestions that, like, provide some alternatives of what someone should do. And I really doubt that if one of his friends had been sexually harassed and they called the police, that he would have made a post like that then. So yeah, so I just want to know what people think about that. Like, if you have any alternatives or suggestions of what someone should do in a situation like that, then please let me know. Like, I wanted to get this person off the streets. I wanted to make sure that he would be adequately punished, and then hopefully deterred from doing that again. Now, that's a whole nother conversation in itself. Like, okay, what punishments actually work? Do punishments actually work? Is the criminal justice system, like, actually doing anything in this country? I think we've seen that, what would work better is actually providing people with their basic necessities. Number one, I do think that this person who sexually harassed me must have had some mental health issues, because, like, who does something like that? So, getting him the mental health help he needs. But in order to get him the help he needs, like, maybe he needs to be arrested and be forced to get that help. Like, right now he's just free, and from what I've seen on a Facebook group that I posted on when I talked about what happened to me, people have said that they've seen the same guy doing this in other public places. So he is sexually harassing other people if he's doing this in public in front of other people. So, like, clearly maybe he has some mental health issues and he needs to get help. So again, you need to then address the issue of the criminal justice system and how to prevent people from committing crimes. If you don't want people calling the police when a crime is committed, like, there's just so much more to address. And as we've seen in America, which is a very capitalist society, which only cares about making money from prisons and making money from arresting people and all that stuff, like, there's just so much to address, and you really would have to go and start from the root of the problem. So I don't have any solutions. I really don't. I'm going to call the police when I feel my, life is in danger or something like that. And I do that knowing that I could then be adversely affected as well, being a minority Muslim woman who holds views in this country that the police are going against very much so right now. So, like, when I call the police on someone, sure, maybe Eric Lang thinks it's a violent act, but hello, I'm a minority woman in this country. So I'm also putting my own life at risk by calling the police. Like, how many times have we seen someone call the police where the police then ends up killing the person who called the police instead of actually doing what they were called for? Like, there's been countless situations where that's happened as well. So I called the police knowing that it's a risk for myself as well, but I did it still hoping that this person would be caught and not do this to anyone else and not do this to me again as well. So yeah, so that's all I have to say about that. Like, if you're going to say something like that, like, oh, calling the police is a violent act, then freaking provide some other alternatives or solutions instead. Okay, so that's all I have to say about that. So let's move on. So let's move on to our fiction book club. So we were supposed to read chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7 for this week of Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. So again, I just feel like it's more of the same. And maybe I should just be a little bit self-critical. Maybe I'm just not the kind of person who this book is meant for. Maybe it's meant for people who really do just enjoy a lot of world building and just a lot of like descriptions and stuff like that. Like for me, I'm just like, okay, where's the plot? Like what's going to happen? Like, 7 chapters in and I feel like we're not even getting hint of a plot, like hint of something sinister happening. So I'm just still kind of waiting for something to happen. There's this talk of the Scalavert stone and you basically see that, I think it brings luck or good fortune to the holder of the stone. You saw some of her friends visit and, give her this really nice coffee machine. You see a succubus who is hired as an assistant. So all this stuff is happening, but I feel like all the stuff is happening, but then also nothing is happening. So I'm just waiting for something. I'm just waiting for the plot to pick up and for me to see, like, is there actually a plot in the story rather than just seeing the daily, like, happenings of a coffee shop. But again, nice world building, nice descriptions, very easy reading. I actually don't know what a succubus is, so maybe I should just look that up right now. I feel like it's maybe like some kind of a vampire or something. I was like, what is a succubus anyway? So I'm just going to look that up right now. What is a succubus? So yeah, succubus is a female demon who is described in various folklore as appearing in the dreams of male humans in order to seduce them. Oh. Repeated interactions between a succubus and a man will lead to sexual activity, a bond forming between them, and ultimately sexual intercourse as she requires semen to survive. Okay, that's definitely not what I thought a succubus was. Okay, I thought it was something similar to a vampire. So that's good to know, I guess. Interesting. Okay, so I wonder if that's what it is in the story as well. I guess it is. So yeah, so I'm just waiting for some kind of a plot now. So hopefully we'll get there. So for next week, let's read chapters 8, 9, and let's see how far we can read. Yeah, let's just read the next 3 chapters, 8, 9, and 10. So let's, for next week, read chapters 8, 9, and 10, and hopefully we'll start to see little glimpses of some kind of a plot where we're going to see more action and things actually happen. So let me know what you think so far, and yeah, so let's just do that for next week, and let's move on. So for our nonfiction book club, we were supposed to read roughly the first half of chapter 10 of this book, which is Palestine, A 4,000-Year History by Noor Masalha. So we were supposed to read up until page 343. So chapter 10 is called Settler Colonialism and Disinheriting the Palestinians. And as predicted, reading this chapter made me so angry, like just really, really angry. So you start with a quote from James Balfour, who wrote the Balfour Declaration. And this quote is, "The 4 great powers are committed to Zionism. And Zionism, be it right or wrong, good or bad, is rooted in age-long traditions, in present needs and future hopes of far greater import than the desires and prejudices of the 700,000 Arabs who now inhabit that ancient land." Like, what utter bullshit. So you're basically saying, you're acknowledging that there are 700,000 Arabs who are living there, and you're describing what they are and what they want and their desires as prejudices. Like, why is that prejudices? Like, why are not what the Zionists want prejudices? Like, just complete utter bullshit that, Islamophobia and Arabophobia has been used to demonize Arabs, vilify Arabs for decades and decades now, and it allows Zionists to just basically get away with whatever they want. And we saw when we read The 100 Years' War in Palestine, I think it was in that book, or maybe it was in Elan Papp's book, I can't remember, about how there was like an agenda to basically label Arabs as terrorists in order to then justify basically doing whatever they want to Arabs and killing them whenever they want, and Muslims. So yeah, So it says Zionism, Zionist settler colonialism is deeply rooted in European colonialism. Ignoring the existence and rights of indigenous peoples, British colonialists often saw large parts of the earth as terra nullius, nobody's land. Again, just complete bullshit. It's talking about how little attention was paid to the fact that Palestine was already populated. And yes, we know that no attention was paid to that fact. So it talks about, Zionism and how it is settler colonialism and the similarities, and how, like, not just similarities, like it is, like that's what it is. Like Zionism is settler colonialism. So, again, it talks about the Balfour Declaration. Let's see, what else? It says Balfour's brand of Christian Zionism was driven by a great deal of Judeophobia, hyped perceptions of Zionist Jewish power, and of fears of mass immigration of Jews from Eastern Europe to Britain. So the main objective was to restrict the entry into Britain of Jews from Eastern Europe. So it was about keeping Jews out of Britain and packing them off to Palestine. And it says here, there was an author who said, keeping Jews out of Britain and packing them off to Palestine were just two sides of the same anti-Semitic coin. But what we've seen before is that the Jews and the Zionists, despite knowing the intentions of why, people like Balfour wanted Jews to colonize Palestine, they don't care. Like, it's to their advantage. So why would they care? Like, they don't care if it's anti-Semitic, and it is anti-Semitic actually to be like, no, Jews can't come to other parts of Europe. So let's just tell them that, you know what, this land is holy. It belongs to you. So you should just go there and colonize that. And in colonizing that, also make sure that their interests align with your own interests, and that you've created this entity that will hopefully do what you want it to do. But now, as we've seen in modern day history that's taking place, that, Israel, it just does whatever the fuck it wants. Like, it doesn't even care what the other Western countries want. Like, they've literally created a monster. So, it talks about the history of Christian Zionism and how that helped push the settler colonialism to happen and so on. So I'm not going to go too much into that. Let's see. It talks about a lot about, how names were changed and how this whole region became Hebraicized in order to justify or legitimize this belief that this is the ancient land that belongs to Jews. And that was just, reading about that was just really infuriating. Like, oh my God, I just can't even explain how angry it made me to see all of that. Let's just get into that. Let's see. I highlighted a lot, but I don't want to read everything I highlighted because that would just be too much. Here's one part where it says, for centuries and for more than 80 years of political Zionism, the Palestinian Arabs were an absolute majority in Palestine. They were a majority, but still not given a voice, and what they wanted did not mean shit to anyone. It says the key to understanding the contribution of Britain to the Palestinian Nakba catastrophe of the mid-20th century lies in the intensity with which some British Christian restorationists embraced the project of a Jewish homeland in Palestine, the way in which the Bible and divine rights and divine promises were seen by the likes of British Prime Minister Lloyd George and his Foreign Secretary Balfour, and generally the extraordinary appeal political Zionism had in the West. It talks a little bit about Edward Said and what he had to say and his obviously very correct observations about everything. Let's see. Here's an interesting quote. So it says, the colonists' aggressive attitude towards the native presence stemmed from their anger towards those who reminded them that there is still another people in the land of Israel that have been living there and does not intend to leave. Like, it's just crazy that you would come into a land and then be angry at the people who are already existing there, because they remind you that they were there first and that this is their land and you're the ones who are the aggressors and taking it over. Yeah. Oh yeah, and again we see more about what Said said about, you know, Orientalism and the study of like the Middle East and blah blah blah, all of that stuff, and how it all plays into Zionism. So now we get into Hebrewisation, antecedents to Zionist toponymy. So this is where we see that toponymic and remapping projects were also deployed extensively and destructively by the European colonial powers and European settler colonial movements. So the Zionist Hebrew renaming projects were critical to the ethnicization, don't know how to pronounce that word, ethnicization of the European Jews and nationalism of the Hebrew Bible. So yeah. Yeah, so then you get this whole chapter like this, you know, talking about this whole section, talking about how all these names were changed from Arabic names to, you know, now like these Hebrew names. And it also talks about the history of Hebrew, which is really interesting. So modern Hebrew, the language, and how that came about to be. And, you know, you see all these names being changed. You see all these people changing their names to sound more Hebrew, to sound like they're actually indigenous to that land. When you see in here in this book about all these people who are actually from Eastern Europe, and they really do not have ties to Palestine, yet they're changing their names to make it seem like that they do have ties to Palestine. And you know who else did that? Netanyahu. Netanyahu is not his actual last name. I don't remember what his actual last name is, but it's not Netanyahu. But he changed it so that it could, you know, he could also seem like he has ties to Palestine when in fact he does not. Yeah, so let's see. Yeah, so then it talks about a couple of settlements that were created. Yeah, and then different strategies that were employed and so on. I remember I was reading something and that angered me so much that I really wanted to talk about it, and now I can't find it. Let me see. Let me see if I can find it. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, so more just talks a lot about all the different names that were changing and so on. Oh, one thing that was interesting was Zionism's contempt for diaspora Jews and rejection of a feminized diaspora and its obsession with synthesizing a nation is reflected in the fact that its symbols were an amalgam chosen not only from the Jewish religion and the militant parts of the Hebrew Bible, but also from the diverse modern traditions and sources, symbols subsequently appropriated as Jewish nationalist, Zionist, or Israeli. And then it talks about these things that were appropriated, and that's something that Israel does very well. Like if you've seen videos of Israel today, like modern Israelis, and they talk about, oh, what's your favorite Israeli food? Oh, what's your favorite like Israeli saying, and this and that, and they're like listing foods which are Palestinian, which they've appropriated and made their own, like pretending that they're the ones who created this food, that it's their food when it's not. A phrase that is used a lot by Arabs is yalla, and then you see videos of Israelis talking about how yalla is their favorite Israeli phrase, which is literally an Arabic word. Like such, oh my God, it's just infuriating how they literally will steal everything. They will steal not only your land, they will steal your food, they'll steal your clothing, they'll steal your traditions, your language, because they have none of their own. Like Israel is a made-up place. It's a made-up state that did not have its own culture, its own history. Like Palestine is what's there. Palestine is the place that had its own culture and history and existed for thousands of years. It's Palestine. Israel is this young, new state with no history of its own, no culture of its own. So it just steals and steals and steals from other people. Like, it's just insane. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, here's something. The indigenizing and nativizing strategies of early settlers and leaders of Hashomer included dressing up like local Palestinian Arabs and cultivating an image of the Sabra, the new Jew or the new Hebrew man, rebranded as native, self-reliant and armed Jew, rooted in the land of Palestine. Like, again, just stealing everything, trying to make it seem like that they were the native ones, that they actually belong there when they don't. What else? Let's see. Yeah, here's something. Who said this? Oh yeah, so there's this author, and he argued that the place names of Palestinian villages and sites seemingly Arab were modern Arabic renderings of old Hebraic names. Like, such freaking bullshit. So they're basically doing this thing where they're claiming that the Arab names, which have existed in this location for thousands of years, were basically modern renderings of ancient Hebrew names. So by then changing everything to Hebrew, they're actually going back to what it was. Like, just utter bullshit. When we saw proof that these I can't remember where in this chapter it was, but it talks about how there is no proof that Hebrew, like, you know, that there was, oh yeah, here we go. So here was an author, and he concluded that contrary to the standard belief among Jews and Christians, Moses did not write the Pentateuch, the 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. So it's talking about that, and yeah, so like, you know, claiming that you have this ancient connection to this land and that the Arabs who existed there for thousands of years were the ones who like changed everything, and now you're just changing it back. Like, just complete utter bullshit. Yeah. You know, again, it's just talking about all the different things, the names that were changed, like, you know, after the Nakba, like the road signs and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just really infuriating. But I think the invention of modern Hebrew is interesting and should show people how, like, fake Israel is and how it's not real. So it says modern Hebrew was invented by Ashkenazi Zionists in the early 20th century, not as a Semitic language, but rather as a hybrid language with European vocabulary and strong European connections, a cultural space with which new settlers of the Zionist colony in Palestine felt at home. And it says many early Zionists called themselves New Hebrews and not Jews. And they deliberately changed their European Yiddish, Russian, Polish, or German names to sound more Hebraic, more biblical. Yeah, and it says the key inventor and father of modern Hebrew was Eliezer ben Yehuda, who was formerly known as Lazar Perelman. Yeah, and it says he was influential in the fashioning of a new Hebrew collective identity rooted in an invented ancient consciousness. This was based on the transformation of liturgical Hebrew from a dormant, almost dead language to a new language spoken today by millions of Israelis. Insane. Yeah. So it says that he was responsible for 2 myths: the myth of a Hebrew restoration and the myth that modern Hebrew is a Semitic language. Yeah. And it says that he saw himself as not only the inventor of modern Hebrew, but also an inventor of the Jewish people. So again, like, just showing you what their identity is today. It's all fake. It's all made up. It's not real. Like, why couldn't you just be happy being who you are in Eastern Europe, you know, and being like, yes, I'm an Eastern European Jew? Like, why are you making up things and saying that you have a connection to a land which you have no connection to. Like, it's just insane. Like, changing your name and trying to change your entire identity. It's insanity. Like, I think it's insanity. Yeah. It says that believing that Arabic and Aramaic had preserved the ancient character of Proto-Semitic language, Ben Yehuda favored a strong reliance upon Arabic and Aramaic in the creation of modern Hebrew in Palestine. He borrowed many words from Yiddish, Arabic, Aramaic, Ladino, Latin, Greek, Polish, Russian, English, and other European languages. And it says, many of the new words coined by Ben Yehuda under the influence of Arabic became part of the standard Hebrew language today. Yeah, just... Yeah, so they were trying to find a language which could replace Yiddish, which could then make them seem like they have this ancient connection to the land, which and that they belong there, and that it's always been theirs. Yeah, what else? It says, let's see, so there was a Hebrew language newspaper, and it was closed down for a year by the Ottoman authorities following fierce opposition from the Orthodox Jewish community of Jerusalem, which viewed his work as sacrilegious. Jerusalem was a predominantly Arabic-speaking city whose Jewish residents spoke both Arabic and Yiddish and objected to the use of the holy tongue, Lashon HaKodesh, Hebrew, for everyday conversation. Other local Jews ridiculed the new Hebrew as a fabricated hybrid language. So as their language is being created, this is what's happening. And I would be curious to see how many Zionists would acknowledge how, made up Hebrew is and how much they borrowed from Arabic, stole from Arabic in order to give themselves legitimacy. Yeah. Let's see, what else? Yeah, I guess that's it. I can't find the one quote. I know that there was something that really angered me, but now I can't find it. But I kept on, as I was reading this, being like, oh, I need to talk about this. Oh, I need to talk about that. And now I can't find it. But yeah, just really, really infuriating. This should make you angry if you care about colonialism. Like, if you actually are an anti-colonialist, like so many people in the board games industry claim to be, but are actually not, then this should anger you, and it should make you realize what a settler colony Israel actually is. So for next week, let's finish off chapter 10, and then we will be done with this book. So read pages 343 until the chapter is finished on page 386. And then we will officially be done with this. And then the next book will be Genocide Bad by Sim Kern. So finish up this book, and then we shall continue on to the next book. But let me know what you think about all the name changing and the creation of this language and all of that stuff below. Like, did it anger you as much as it angered me? I would really like to know. So let me know in the comments below what you think, and we will finish up this book next week. So let's move on. So let's talk a little bit more about the board game industry and how they're still silent, even though Israel is basically in the midst of its final solution of killing as many Palestinians as it can and trying to get them to leave and, sending them off to Libya or wherever they think that they're going to send off these Palestinians to. There was someone in the board game industry who made a post on Facebook, and I just want to read what he wrote and then one of the replies to it, and just to show you what kind of bullshit exists in this industry. So he starts by saying, gonna try to be apolitical on this topic, but we are crossing lines, and I believe people need to stand up, speak up, and quiet the extremes that have dominated feeds and media for far too long. I'm not here to convince you to be pro-Israel, yeah, right, or pro-Palestine. Everyone has their own truths, and I am comfortable where I stand, and I am not going to try to change your position. I just wanted to remind everyone that violence has no place in the public square debate. It never has and never will. The ends justify the means arguments lead us to anarchy and a loss of humanity. Most importantly, just remember, historical violence against the Jews has typically not ended with the Jews. For those in the silent majority, waiting until you are directly impacted is not a great plan. As a country of immigrants, my family included, you might consider that many of us are not that far down the list of targets from the Jews. Violence against the Jews has generally been a canary in the coal mine for broader violent movements. He made this post after those 2 people were killed outside of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., who, mind you, were not Jewish. Or at least I know that one of them definitely was not Jewish. I can't remember about the other person. And mind you that they... I don't remember their names, but I know that one of those people, like, you could see the post that he's made in public and how he basically advocated for the killing of all Palestinians. Like, he literally would refer to all Palestinians as terrorists and talk about how Gaza needs to be eliminated and blah, blah, blah. And now you have people like him mourning the loss of someone who was advocating for violence. So why is it that when violence is committed against Arabs and Muslims, it's not seen as violence and everyone's just silent, but then all of a sudden 2 people are killed and oh my God, we condemn violence, we condemn violence. You only freaking condemn violence when it's against Jews or non-Muslims. Like, when it's actually happening to Muslims and Arabs, no one fucking condemns violence. Where are the condemnations of violence when Palestinians and Arabs are killed in America for being Palestinians or Arabs or Muslims? Like, we saw a little boy who was killed when the genocide first started. Where were the condemnations of violence then? You just don't see it. But whenever either a Jewish person or an Israeli is killed, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we must condemn violence. Violence is terrible, although we fully support a genocide of the Arabs and Muslims. And then someone commented, and I have a lot of mutual friends with this person. So he wrote on this post, the West has heart disease. They believe that humane emotions flow through everyone in the same way. That is not true. The leadership of Palestine voted for Hamas. The culture is reared on hating the West, not to just dislike, but to kill all who are not under them. Many of the people defending and supporting them would quickly be slaughtered in horrible ways if they actually went there. The lies have influenced our youth in hopes of weakening our minds about it. Make no mistake, radical Islam wants Israel and all Western-minded nations dead. It has been that way and it will never change. They will not be humane about it in any fashion. For the record, gays for Palestine is like chickens for KFC. There is no coexistence on that level of hate. Like, do not even know where to begin with this kind of bullshit. So I don't know if you guys know what pinkwashing is. But pinkwashing is using, LGBTQ plus issues to basically mask all of the brutality that Israel does against Palestinians, trying to make it this, claim that it's the safe haven for, LGBTQ plus people, the only safe haven in the Middle East. Like, you are pinkwashing, and that's what he's doing right now. He's pinkwashing. He's basically saying gays for Palestine is like chickens for KFC. Like, no, it's not. Like, okay, and you can acknowledge 2 things as being true at once. You can acknowledge that maybe Palestine isn't the safest place for gays if they're not like literally worrying about actually surviving and living. Like, let's suppose Palestine did exist. Let's suppose, they were allowed to actually exist as a normal society that's not being blown out of existence, and that they had access to water and electricity and all the things that they should have access to, but they don't because of Israel. But let's suppose they had a normal functioning society, and yeah, maybe it wouldn't be the safest place for gays, but that doesn't mean that 2 things can't be true at the same time. You can acknowledge that it might not be the safest place for gays, but you can also acknowledge that they have a right to exist, just like everyone else has a right to exist, and that they should not be the victims of a genocide. Like, you should not be advocating a genocide, which this person clearly is, just because you think it's unsafe for gays or unsafe for trans people. There's a reason that there are countless gays and trans people and other people who are part of that community who are advocating for the genocide to end, because they are not stupid like this person, Eric. And they acknowledge that two things can be true at once, that you as a trans person, as a gay person, whatever, can acknowledge that maybe a country might not be the safest place for a trans person, but that doesn't mean that we should just kill them and eliminate them and that it's okay to commit a genocide on them. Like, no, like, what utter complete bullshit. You want to talk about humanity? Where the fuck is this person's humanity? He clearly has none. All he's doing is talking about radical Islam wants Israel and all Western-minded nations dead, which is completely false. Okay, maybe radical Islam does, but the vast majority of Muslims in the world are not radical. The vast majority of Muslims in the world are not radical, are not terrorists. There are over 1 billion freaking Muslims in this world, and to label them all as radical would be completely wrong. And unfortunately, that's what people like Eric do. They always try to label all Muslims as being radical and wanting the West gone and wanting to kill everyone who doesn't think like them. Here is a Muslim woman right in front of you who's not wearing hijab, who wears dresses, who sometimes exposes her legs. Do you think I want to live under Sharia law? Like, when you watch my videos, do you get the impression that I, as a practicing Muslim woman, want to live under Sharia law? Like, is that the impression you get from me? If that's not the impression you get from me, I am like your average Muslim in America. Like, this is what the average Muslim in America looks like. Like, I do believe in all the tenets of my faith, and I, try to pray. I'm not very good about praying 5 times a day. I need to get better about it. I try to fast during Ramadan. I do all these things. I don't drink alcohol. I don't eat pork. Like, I abstain from things which are forbidden, or try my best to, but I lead a moderate lifestyle in America, which the vast majority of Muslims do. Like, the vast majority of Muslims in America are like me. Like, that is what a Muslim in America looks like. Do I want all people who don't share my beliefs to be killed? No. Do I think that Islam should rule the whole world? No. Like, so, using this fear mongering of radical Islam to justify a genocide is just complete, utter bullshit. And the people who are liking posts like this and stuff like that, and the silence, like, no one is talking about how Islamophobia and racism against Arabs fuels so much of, the bad things that are happening in this world. Like, it's just like the one type of accepted racism that's still allowed, the one type of accepted bigotry that's still allowed is to be Islamophobic or racist against Arabs. Like, that is still allowed in this country. Like, people don't view it as a bad thing, which they should, because, countries get away with so much because of it. Like, brainwashing the masses like the stupid Eric person, like, that's how countries get away with so much and committing so many atrocities. But no, we've already talked at length about Hamas and how Hamas was elected and all of that and blah, blah, blah. And we talked about the Hamas charter a long time ago and how the charter has changed, and it's not predicated on just destroying all of the Jews. It's not predicated on like killing all Jews in Israel, etc. But no one wants to acknowledge actual facts. They just want to fearmonger and justify an ongoing genocide. It's just complete and utter bullshit. And as this genocide is, at its worst point right now that it's been since October of 2023, people in this industry are still silent. And I want to talk about why, people might be like, are you just racist against Black people? Like, why are you calling out Our Family Plays games? Like, okay, they're sponsored by Zionists. Like, who cares? Like, why are you focusing on that? The reason I focus on that is because of the fact that they, on Twitter, they had liked different posts, like, showing like, oh, that they care about Palestine. The reason I'm pointing it out is because during election season, when Eric Lang was making posts about how everyone should be voting for Holocaust terrorists, Mick from Our Family Plays Games was making comments about how, Trump is going to be so much worse for Gaza. Like, why do these stupid people not realize how terrible Trump is going to be for Gaza? Like, do they really care about Gaza, or are they just pretending? And like, he was like basically acting like he cares about Palestine and acting like, voting for Harris is the better decision in order to guilt people who actually care about Palestine when they themselves, in fact, do not care about Palestine. That's why I pointed out. It's just hypocrisy. It's just double standards time and time again. Like, do you think after making these comments on Eric Lang's posts that he's said anything about Palestine since then? No. So Mick, who used the ongoing genocide in Gaza to try to get people to vote for a woman who openly stated that she would allow Israel to do whatever it wants, has he said one single word condemning the genocide? No, he never gave a fuck about Palestine. He only used it in an attempt to get people to vote for a woman who was also hell-bent on killing Palestinians. Like, and we saw the news come out, like this is old news now, that the Biden administration never once pressured Israel to a ceasefire, to agree to a ceasefire. So that's why I point them out, because they pretend to care about Palestine, but they don't. And as long as you're sponsored by a Zionist publisher, as long as you're promoting games by a Zionist publisher, which is Kids Table Board Gaming and Burnt Island Games, you cannot fucking say that you care about Palestine. Like, it's absolute bullshit. It would be no different than saying you support Black Lives Matter, but then going and promoting games by people who are part of the Ku Klux Klan. Like, it would be no fucking different. So yeah, so that's what we have in this industry. We have people who just pretend to care about issues and then just stay dead silent about it. I saw an Arab recently who posted on Facebook that shaming people is not going to get them to care about the genocide. No, it probably won't get them to care about the genocide. And I don't know if that post was in reference to me, but I will say that I will continue to shame people because these same people pretend to be advocates for human rights and diversity, equity, and inclusion in this industry. So I will continue to shame them. It may not ever get them to start caring about the genocide, but at least I can point out what fucking hypocrites they are and all the double standards they have and how they really are not who they say they are. Like, that is my goal. Like, my goal in saying all of this, I know that they're never gonna care. Like, I know that. Like, you think, and someone like me who talks shit about people who don't, who are hypocrites, like, even that should not stop them from caring if they were really truly good people. Like, it should not seem like, oh, Sarah won and we have to admit defeat and admit that a genocide is bad. Like, if you are a truly good person, truly a humanitarian, like, you would actually care about the genocide. You should not care that, oh, Sarah was right. Sarah, like, called us out on it. Like, yeah, I called you out all on being fucking hypocrites and not actually caring about the genocide. But if you truly are a good human, you shouldn't care about any of that. Like, you should actually be using your voice to say, no, genocide is wrong. Stop the genocide. Ceasefire now. Like, free Palestine. Like, you should be saying all of these things. Like, you shouldn't care that I'm calling you out on being the hypocrites that you are. But yeah, I'm going to continue to shame them because of who they claim to be and who they are actually not. So yes, I know that me shaming them isn't going to get them to care unless they actually truly have integrity and start caring. So yeah, so the intent of me shaming them is not to actually get them to care, because that's not going to work. So yeah. One of the podcasts I listen to a lot is Hidden Brain, and there was actually an episode about how to get people to kind of see your point of view, and shaming people obviously is not the way to do that. So I know that shaming people is not going to be like, oh, Sarah, you're so right. Like, all of a sudden, we're going to start saying free Palestine because of you shaming us. Like, no, they're probably going to double down if I shame them. But again, if they have integrity and they are who they say they are, they can just ignore what I've been saying about them and just come out and say the truth, which is free Palestine, which is that they acknowledge that a genocide is terrible. Like, they should come out and acknowledge these truths that any humanitarian should believe in, but they're not doing that. So all I'm doing is showing that they are not who they say they are, and that this industry is just completely bullshit and full of hypocrites. Like, that's what I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. And I'm going to continue to do that because, like, as someone who was labeled as dangerous back in 2021 for speaking up for Palestine, and was labeled as problematic in 2021 for speaking up for Palestine, and was labeled all of this for pointing out that Helena Cappel is a Zionist, and then when they were doing that, they themselves were pretending to care about Palestine, and yet now they've been dead silent since 2023 about the genocide. Like, that shows you who they are. Like, they never cared about Palestine even back then. They just didn't like the fact that one of their friends in the industry, their good friend Helena Cappel, that the truth was exposed about her. That's what they didn't like. And they don't give a shit about Palestine. So yeah, so this industry is just full of people who believe in all kinds of shit about Muslims and Islam, which isn't true, and it's not going to change. Like, I would love to know, like, all these people who are, you know, big names in the industry, like, how many Muslims do they actually know in person? Like, how many Muslims are they actually friends with? I would guess that it's either 0 or 1, like 1 maximum, if they even have a Muslim friend. But what I've seen, from what I've observed, the vast majority of people in this industry know shit about Islam, don't know shit about the Middle East, you know, and they really have no fucking clue what they're talking about when it comes to stuff like this. That's what I've seen. You know, there is a Muslim right here who they could ask questions to and try to learn more, but, you know, of course, no one wants to do that. So, yeah, and that leads me to, it reminds me of how angry I was when I learned that, you know, this one person in the industry who was one of my biggest bullies and harassers back then, Calvin Wong, who co-designed a game with Eric Lang. He, who knows nothing shit about the Middle East, was a cultural consultant for the game Merv, which is about Iran. Like, what utter bullshit, because this is the same kind of person who would say, oh no, you shouldn't be culturally consulting on games for which you are not associated with the culture. Yet he had no problems whatsoever taking money and agreeing to be a cultural consultant for a game about Iran, when he himself has held views which I would personally, as a Muslim, would say are Islamophobic, but he's obviously going to disagree. But he was one of my biggest haters and bullies on Twitter a long time ago. And when I pointed out the fact that he did something which he himself has criticized other people for, he was like, oh, I did tell them that they should have hired someone else. Like, no, then you should have had fucking integrity and not accepted the job. You should have said, no, I'm not going to be a cultural consultant on a game for which I don't, you know, I'm not a part of that culture. I don't know anything about it. And you should actually go hire someone who does know something about it. But did he do that? No, he accepted the money. So time and time again, you see these people have no fucking integrity. Like, it's just insane. Like, I can, you know, I've got like this whole database of like information about what hypocrites these people are. It's just like this, that's what this industry is like. And I just don't know why no one else cares that this industry is just full of really shitty people. But yeah, but that's the way it is. Anyway, so that's my rant of the week. So let's move on. This week's question of the week is, what is the most beautiful gardening game that you've played? And what is your favorite? So they don't have to be the same, but let me know in the comments below which is the most beautiful one you've played and your favorite one. And until next week, bye.